This week, Checks in History comes from the town of Naarden, which is about 20 kilometers from Amsterdam. I'm standing in front of a tomb, and inscribed on that tomb is the inscription Jan Amos Kamensky, or internationally, as he's better known, Comenius. Now, I should say that there is a little bit of dispute as to whether the body that lies inside this tomb is actually the person who is deemed the father of modern education. Jan Amos Kamensky was born in 1592 in the town of Nivnice in Moravia. An extensive writer, his works of literature are devoted to the idea of common understanding among individuals, groups and state organizations. He was also the pioneer of many of the methods of teaching that are commonplace in the world today, and placed great importance in the development of young children. Dr. Kees Koop is the director of the Comenius Museum in Naarden.
In our time it is not so revolution, but in his time it is revolutionary that he started to co-education, boys and girls. They were the same value for humanity. And so he started by the age of 3 years already. He recognized two phases of life, the first 6 years, then the second 6 years till 12, and then the third 6 years till 18, and then still 6 years university, 18 to 24.
A deeply religious man, Kamensky was a firm believer that education was the key to peace in the world.
He has always maintained he was a theologian, and from his Christian faith he was a man of peace. He had a dream, he called himself a man with a dream, and the dream was peace for the nations. What he was trying to do, to make on structures in practical life that peace could be effectuated. But he soon recognized that you must begin with young children to give an education to peace. Peace is something you have to learn. As you have to learn drawing and designing, you have to learn peace too.
Not that he lived through a time of peace. Indeed, the direction of his life was continually altered by the ravages of war.
Deeply he was affected by this wartime. It was the last 30 years of our 18 years war. It was a turbulent time of the religious war in Europe. You have the Huguenot war in France, the 80 years war here in Holland, and the 30 years war in Eastern Europe. And he lost 2 wives during this wartime. Even a third wife he lost in Poland, and all his books and all his manuscripts. He said of himself, I am a man with a dream, but I have no patria. I have no homeland. I am a rover by profession, so as I am a theologian by profession.
Kamensky was also a bishop in the Moravian Church and became its president during the 30 Years' War. Because of the persecution of the order, he was forced to flee the Bohemian kingdom in 1628. However, he soon discovered that his educational and philosophical ideas were in demand all over Europe.
He was immediately recognized by his genius ideas, even by the Jesuits. So in the Roman Catholic camp, refuted all his ideas on philosophy. They recognized his ideas of psychology and pedagogy. And all the thinking part of the nations at that time recognized the great values of his methods. So as educator, he is already recognized immediately. On the contrary of his philosophical ideas, who were recognized by his dad, and his theological ideas are always disputed from the beginning.
Kamensky was active in many different parts of Europe, including Poland, England, Sweden, Hungary and the Netherlands. His work was widely appreciated and highly influential.
There is a very important role of the ideas of Comenius through Hartlib, who lived in England, in Sheffield. And these ideas influenced the invention of the Royal Academy of Science, and on the other hand the ideas of building to a new Europe a temple of humanity that we find now in modern masonry. These two typical British institutes, so the Royal Society, what is different from the Royal Academies you find here in Holland and in France. The Royal Society is a society of wishmen who think together how they can influence a good evolution to a better world. Basically, it is all the ideas of Comenius who have influenced these people.
A contemporary of Galileo and Descartes, Comenius's ideas contributed greatly to the Enlightenment.
Leibniz, it was a German philosopher and Herder later on, and he influenced the ideas of the Enlightenment of Europe, and from that time, also the 18th century, he influenced all new educators, Froebel, Rousseau, and all the others. He lived a good 100 years before that, so you can see him as really the father of the modern educational ideas.
However, after the ceding of Bohemia and Moravia to Rome at the end of the 30 Years' War in 1648, Comenius didn't neglect his clerical duties. He returned to his homeland to lead the few surviving members of the Moravian order into exile in Poland.
He was the last bishop even of the Moravian brothers. It cost him a lot of time for his role as pastor of his flock of Czech refugees. More than half time he spent for his pastoral work for his people. He wrote special for them in Czech stories, and at the end of his life he said, I would write stories to consolate them and to give them strength.
Later in his life, Comenius was attracted to the Netherlands by its religious tolerance and its tradition of book printing, and many of his works were published there, including his great Orbis Pictus, or The Visible World in Pictures, in 1658. Comenius died in Amsterdam in 1670 and was buried in the nearby town of Naarden. Although not quite certain which of the three bodies in the church is that of the great scholar, the Czechoslovak government paid for the construction of a mausoleum, which was inaugurated in 1935. The adjoining Comenius Museum was opened in 1992 on land permanently leased to the Czech state.
He found at last rest for a tormented soul who suffered a lot, who lost 3 wives, a lot of children, and who suffered by the persecution of, at that time, fanatic Roman Catholic Church and the Inquisition. And he felt himself safe buried in the Republic of the Holland, because Inquisition even let not in rest the dead bodies when they had a chance to burn them. So he found, even after his death, a rest of his body here in the mausoleum of Naarden.